Greetings, adventurers, and welcome back to the Den of the Drake. Other dragons hoard gold, while I hoard internet cringe. Dungeons and Dragons requires a special—
Hey Drake, the UPS guy's here. He wanted me to ask you where you wanted this statue.
This really couldn't have waited 10 more minutes. I'm trying to record a video. Just tell him to put it anywhere. I don't care.
Hey, that was the guy who signs my paycheck.
Where they put the— Oh, Hello, Drake. You have been evading me for a long time, but now your soul is finally mine. Ow! What was that? How did you manage to sneak a holy seal into my chamber? Ha! While I do have both God and anime on my side, that was NordVPN's new threat protection feature. NordVPN offers a safe and smooth online experience for its users. Thanks to Nord's threat protection, I can block intrusive ads, web blockers, and even protect myself from malware. And, well, there's nothing more malicious than the literal devil. NordVPN. I should have known. Easy to use one-click activation. More than 5,300 servers in 60 countries. Blistering fast network speeds. Of course you would get your grubby little hands on it. That's not fair. You've known that ever since you lost that fiddling contest down in Georgia, your soul has belonged to me. Well, my first mistake was being down in Georgia to begin with. My second mistake was not getting NordVPN sooner. Nord's got the option to route my traffic through not one, but 2 VPN servers. And if the VPN connection accidentally drops, the automatic kill switch stops the device from accessing the web. Plus, NordVPN is available on every major platform. I'm untouchable, and there's nothing you can do about it. You little creep. I may not be able to get your soul, but you're still stuck here without access to any of your favorite movies or video games. How is that for an eternity of damnation? Jesus, no wonder you were thrown out of paradise. Everyone knows that NordVPN can access region-locked content anywhere, anytime. Every streaming service, game, and movie is all at my fingertips all the time. All I gotta do is open the map and with one click, change my location. In fact... There we go. Now it's only a matter of time before I'm back on Earth. In the meantime, viewers of my channel get access to exclusive deals thanks to the beautiful people over at NordVPN. All you gotta do is go to nordvpn.com/denofthedrake, or click the link in the description to get a 2-year plan with a huge discount, plus an additional month for free. Nord offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to giving it a try. Link is in the description. Curse you, dragon! Mark my words, I will have your soul one day! Get fucked, Satan. Why does no one ever take me seriously? Well, it took me literally going to hell and back, but it looks like we can finally get down to business. The story I have for you today stars a player who takes a page out of Django Unchained and makes a gunslinger character, only for a seething ranger player to shove his filthy little bowstring calloused hands where they don't belong. Now, without any further delay, let's go ahead and dive right into the horrifying world of r/RPGHorrorStories. Enjoy. This week's story comes from user HungryForCookies123 and is titled, "You Can't Use Muskets in Fantasy." So this is a story about me using a musket in D&D and how it apparently made one of the other players pretty angry. Cast, DM. My new friend that I've met a few weeks ago. I don't know how experienced of a DM he is, but he's DM'd a few sessions already. Druid, Fighter, Warlock, and Cleric. Players that are not all that important to the story. Bob, an Elven Ranger. And the problem player. Me, a human gunslinger. Now before I start, I have to explain that I used a homebrew class with a homebrew backstory.
If someone is interested, here's the link to the class, and here's the link to the backstory. We, of course, tried to make it balanced so my character won't be overpowered. We also made some changes to how muskets worked, and we expanded the firing range from 40-120, which is just a bad joke, to 120-480. We were thinking about changing the damage since the musket does a D12, and most heavy-range weapons use a D10. But we decided that having a reload mechanic, misfire mechanic, and being loud as heck while dealing 2 damage points on a misfire balanced it out. We also raised misfire from 2 to 3, so there was a bigger chance for the weapon to break. The DM also made some lore changes for muskets. In his world, there was no gunpowder. Instead of that, people are using a crystal powder from magic crystals. It works in a similar way, but instead of lighting it on fire, you just had to use some force to make it explode. And instead of making a lot of smoke when you shot it, it emitted a quick flash of blue light. Our characters started at level 3, so I picked a marksman for my subclass. We also decided that I won't be trying to make or obtain any modern-like guns and will stick with my musket. And the DM promised, since my character is very attached to his weapon and won't swap it with anything, he will figure out other ways for me to get stronger in the fight as the story goes on. So instead of picking up loot-like weapons with +1 or +2 bonuses, I will be upgrading my own weapon. Okay, so before we get started on the meat and potatoes of the story, I should make it perfectly clear where I stand on the guns in fantasy debate. Firearms absolutely have a place in the fantasy genre. I will also mention that I'm super biased since outside of this little YouTube sphere, one of my favorite pastimes is my self-motivated journey to master and own every single firearm I can get my hands on. My brothers and sisters, I am a simple man, and if you can get these 3 things nailed, then you can understand exactly who I am as a person. Guns, dinosaurs, and Dungeons and Dragons. Now, my knowledge of guns and gun culture doesn't really come up on the channel since, well, it's not really relevant, and I don't want to force my own interests on anyone if I don't absolutely need to. However, if I get the chance to advocate for playing a character packing a Smith & Wesson Model 3 on his hip and a Winchester 1887 on his back, then you know that I'm gonna damn well do it. I was actually talking about this with the Dice Goblins the other day, but it's interesting to think about how people think that sections of time happened consecutively and not concurrently. Like, for example, most people think that there was the time of the Samurai and the Bushido Code, Bushido, whatever, I'm not a fucking weeb, and then after that came the time of the American West and your stereotypical cowboy. But the crazy part is that these 2 things were happening at the same time. Saigo Takamori was popularly known as the Last Samurai, and would have been 36 years old in 1862. Want to know what America was doing in 1862? Fighting a civil war with rifles and inventing what is considered to be the world's first machine gun. I want to step back and highlight how I said these soldiers were using rifles and not muskets. Since smoothbore muskets had been around for so long at that point, they had been completely outdated. These weren't even close to the first rifles, mind you. Those were invented in Augsburg, Germany in 1498, literally 330 years before Saigo Takamori was even born. And would you look at that? D&D 5th edition has an official samurai subclass for the fighter. So I got one question. When am I getting my Gatling gun paladin, you cowards? Of course, I'm using this as an excuse to nerd out about firearms for a bit, but you get my point. Guns absolutely have a place in fantasy. But if your DM doesn't want guns in their world and wants to go for more of a Tolkien-esque vision of fantasy, then it's not really your place to argue for your cowboy bounty hunter's place at the table. But for me personally, I like my fantasy to have a bit more bang. First session. Our story began in a small mountain village. Our party met at the local inn. We sat down at the table, ate, and talked a bit. We agreed that we had a common goal of getting to the other side of the mountains, so we should stick together. At the same time, a group of bandits suddenly came to the village. They rode into the village on horseback and immediately demanded money and food from farmers and villages. The innkeeper explained to us that these bandits from time to time come to this and other villages to collect payment for security, and asked us to leave before we got noticed. However, most of our characters were good or lawful, so that was not an option. We decided that I and the ranger should take position on the roof of the house next to the inn, and that the rest of the party would go outside to confront the bandits. A short conversation ensued between the bandits and the party, which gave us time to take a position. We decided to start the fight with quick shots from the roof as a surprise round. I targeted the bandit who was talking to our fighter because I suspected that he was going to be the leader of this group. DM.
Okay, you two still did not get noticed and have your targets in sight. What do you do?
Me. I target the bandit and I shoot him with a musket. Bob. You what? Until then, I never used the word gun or musket, so maybe he didn't know what I was using. Me. What? Bob. You can't use that kind of weapon. Me. Why? Bob. Because this is a fantasy campaign. There are no muskets in fantasy. Me. What? Of course there are. Bob. No, this is fantasy. DM. There are muskets and firearms. I mentioned that in session 0. Here a discussion took place which lasted a good 10 to 15 minutes. Me and DM were arguing with Bob, and the rest of them just decided to stay neutral. In general, Bob tried to convince us that there should be no firearms in fantasy. He gave Lord of the Rings as an example, saying that it is real fantasy, and that there are no firearms in that franchise, while I cited that even Critical Role used firearms. Then Bob said something like, "You are not Critical Role, and you are not Matthew Mercer," or something along those lines. Finally, Cleric joined the conversation, probably already irritated by this, and pointed out that this universe does not use gunpowder but magic crystals instead. And if magic is so powerful that you can create fireballs and stuff like that, why can't it be used to push a metal ball through a metal tube at high speed? Thank you, Cleric, I hope you are reading this. This basically killed the argument, and moments later we finally got back into the game. Finally, I shot the bandit. I used a violent shot to deal more damage, and used 2 grit points, see link to the class, and rolled 3d12 plus modifiers. I don't remember how much I did, but the DM said,
Okay, he's dead. How do you want to kill him?
Me. Already? Okay. I take aim and I shoot him right in the side of his head. Bob. What the f*** is this damage? Me. I used 2 of my skills to do this. It's not like I can do it on every turn. The rest of the fight had gone rather smoothly, but Bob mumbled something under his breath every now and then, mostly when I was dealing more damage than him. From that moment on, his character's behavior changed completely, and suddenly he turned from a friend to my rival. He started to get whiny, and thought that I had stolen his kills every time I killed a low HP enemy. Anyway, we killed all the bandits and got a small reward from the villagers and went to go sleep in the tavern. This is where our first session ended. As far as I know, between sessions, Bob tried to convince the DM to remove firearms from his game. He did it on private chat, but DM took the conversation to the group chat so that everyone could see it, and said that he will not remove firearms from his game, and even if it bothers Bob, well, he can just leave because no one else has this problem. Session 2 started with Bob sneaking into my room to try and take my gun. He had high rolls, so I did not wake up. Luckily, there is a rule saying that stealing, breaking, and throwing away other players' stuff is not allowed, so Bob decided to jam my weapon instead. DM allowed it, but in a last effort to save my gun from this guy, he made him roll to check to see if he knew how to do it. Bob tried to argue, but DM stated that he had to know how the weapon works in order to jam it. Luckily, Bob rolled not so good, and the only idea that his character got was to stick a rock into the barrel. Bob wanted to re-roll this, but because we all knew that this was stupid, DM stated that he might be able to try again the next day. So, yeah. My character quickly noticed a rock in the barrel and removed it, which made Bob pretty pissed. It was actually the only interesting thing that happened this session besides him bitching about every single time I killed someone or rolled high damage. Okay, so you all know that I'm in the pro guns in D&D camp, but I knew that something was up when I saw this 3d12 plus modifier shit. Originally, I just thought OP was using the Matt Mercer Gunslinger subclass, which is fine, but OP was kind enough to drop a link to the homebrew they were using, and I realized something. That is not a link to D&D Beyond. That is a link to the D&D Wiki, home to some of the worst homebrew content imaginable. And well, let's just say that OP is playing one of the most broken homebrews I have ever seen in my entire time playing D&D. I'll go ahead and drop the link to the homebrew down below so you can check it out yourself if you want. I think the author's intention was to expand on Mercer's subclass homebrew into an entire class of its own. And let me tell you, they f***ing whiffed. This class can deal 5d12 piercing damage plus modifiers at level 3, target literally any creature at any range. The average D&D battle mat is approximately 48 5-foot squares across, and OP's max range is double that, can give themselves an advantage pretty much whenever they want, has the Rogue's Evasion ability, can disengage as a bonus action and walks 10 feet faster than all other classes, gives all of their teammates advantage on their attacks while also giving themselves advantage on all saving throws, gets a free +4 damage bonus on all single-handed weapons, has access to the Paladin spell list, can smite at range, has the ability to attack before initiative is even rolled, and can literally opt out of dying. And these were just my favorite parts that I got from just skimming through the thing. Long story short, OP is playing as a f***ing god with a gun. Oh, but that's okay, they still have to reload. That's a downside, right? Oh, well, that's true. For literally only one level, because this class gets rid of reloading entirely at level 2. Okay, what about misfiring on 1s and 2s? Okay, great. Now the rest of the party can either not play the game because OP already killed all the enemies, or they can not play the game because OP is out of the fight and the enemies that the DM scaled to fight God himself curb stomps their characters. Now take a step back and imagine that you're Bob. You are playing a bog standard ranger. You deal 1d8 damage and you get a wolf companion that becomes useless at like level 5. Meanwhile, the DM has okayed a homebrew that makes your role in the party so obsolete that your character might as well be fighting using a wet noodle instead of a bow. It doesn't justify being a jerk and trying to solve an out-of-game issue with in-game pettiness, but holy shit, OP. How could you or your DM possibly think that this homebrew should have been allowed within a mile of a D&D table? It's beyond me. And this should absolutely serve as a lesson to any new DMs as to why any material from the D&D wiki should be kept far away from your table until it is given a thorough inspection. OP, I don't think that Bob is pissed that you're using a gun. I think that Bob is pissed that he doesn't get to play the game. Finally, the third and so far last session came. It went pretty good, and there's not much to talk about for most of the session. At the end of that session, our characters were approaching an old fortress in the mountains. It was supposed to be an outpost for the bandits because it turned out those bandits from session 1 were part of a much larger group that will for sure seek revenge for their murdered friends. We set up camp on a high ground near the fortress and decided to wait with an attack until early morning. At night, Bob, again, tried to play with my gun. But this time he rolled badly enough for my character to wake up. I described how my character grabs his musket and pushes it into Bob's neck. I also marked him as my target to remove disadvantage from attacking targets at that range. We had a short chat in character, which was basically me telling him not to move and to stay the fuck away from my gun. I was kinda saying it in and out of character. because I was a bit sick of this. Bob tried to describe how his character grabs the barrel of my gun to push it away from his neck. I pointed out that I was warning him, and I will shoot him if he moves, and asked the DM if I could feasibly do that. Dick move, I know, but I just wanted him to stop. DM stated that he will do a dex roll. If Bob wins, he will push my weapon away. However, if I win, I will be able to shoot him as he goes for my gun. I promised Bob that I will use all my points to put the full 5d12 plus modifier into his character's head. I know that I have a good chance to down him in one shot since he had something around 35 maximum hit points. He backed off. Session ended around an hour later with our characters approaching the fortress. This week we will have another session, but I don't really know what Bob is planning, and to be honest, it's getting kinda boring. I feel like I should ask my DM to kick Bob from the game, or at least order him to stop with his anti-firearm behavior. TLDR. Player does not like firearms in fantasy, and tries to remove them from the game. After he fails, he tries to mess with my weapon at every opportunity. So, that was a clusterfuck. Bob is irritating as all hell since he refuses to just sit down and say, my character is completely useless. Can we, not have the super broken homebrew in the game? And instead tries to cripple OP's character as some sort of weird, table-breaking revenge fantasy. So, that's pretty cringe. And as for OP, that class is beyond broken. And I can even understand why Bob would try to put your character's life in danger, because I can really only see the reformation or complete removal of your character to be a healthy thing for the group. Hell, even trying to play something like that tells me, and I'm gonna be brutally honest here, you have no idea what you're doing is dickish, or you're just kind of a dick. And based on this comment you left as a reply below your post,
I don't know if he'll ever talk or listen to me about it, and yeah, I'll keep my gun close. As long as I could one-shot him with my gun, he probably won't be making much trouble.
I can see that you are well aware of how broken your character is, which makes me lean towards the latter of the two options. Fix your class, OP. You're making us gun nuts look bad. Now before we go, let's take a look at this week's Gallery of the Drake. This week's fan art comes from viewer Nika Makes Art, and let's be honest, this is absolutely the cutest piece of fan art I have ever received. Nika tells me that her daughter loves watching my videos with her mama, which was terrifying to think that I had a hand in influencing the next generation until she told me that she doesn't actually understand most of the words I say. Also, she likes to call me Quack Quack, which is what she calls all animals with wings. No, dragon.
Quack, quack.
Dragon.
Quack, quack.
Okay, we'll go with Quack Quack. Thank you again, Nika, for submitting your art. And tell your daughter that Quack Quack thinks that she's absolutely adorable. If you want to see your artwork featured in Gallery of the Drake, be sure to send it to the email in my About section. I love receiving and reviewing fan art, and it means the world to me that I can inspire artists like you to create artwork like this. With the story over and artwork displayed, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you feel like supporting the channel further, my Patreon link is in the description. I would like to thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you next time in the Den of the Drake.